Okay, my name is Rob Mattern. I'm with Mattern, and I am with our lead office supplies consultant, Cory Riner, to talk about office supplies.
Hi, Cory.
I tell you, Pat, can you just mute yourself till we get through this, the
Sure.
introduction? Okay, great. Um, and how things have changed in the office supplies area since COVID, and why it's probably worth a lot to take a look at your current situation. Cory, how are we doing today?
I'm doing great. How are you, Rob?
I'm doing excellent. Beautiful day here in Philadelphia. First day of baseball season. I just hope Phillies are able to sell beer this season.
Huh. Why weren't they able to sell beer last year?
Well, they lost the opener. So, so start off. I tell you, I promise the rest of this conversation is going to be a lot better better than that opening joke. So, before we get started, some simple housekeeping rules. Everyone's muted. Unmute to speak, ask questions, and participate. Make sure to introduce yourself when you do. Please feel free to submit questions through chat, and we will work them in as best as we possibly can. And be sure to keep yourself muted during the presentation to avoid background noise. Again, I just want to repeat, probably the best way to submit questions is chat. If you have a comment you want to make, please feel free to take yourself off mute and make the comment. So hopefully you all got your Starbucks e-card in your inbox. If you didn't, please check your spam and grab that cup of coffee. And we're going to get started here, and it's going to be a great coffee break. At Mattern, we help law firms become more cost-effective and efficient in their office and administrative services, records, and information governance. One area that took a downturn during COVID, and really for the past couple of years post-COVID, was office supplies. A lot of the spend went down dramatically. Firms had difficult times meeting if they had a contractual spend in their agreement, meeting that. And it's interesting how things have come back in that area. When I say things, most of the spend has come back. However, a lot of things have changed. So we're just going to take a walk through really quickly what has changed and really how to structure the contract going forward, some of the things you want to consider, what's really are the impactful items now that you want to take a look at. We're going to talk about Amazon, okay, one of Cory's favorite subjects. We're going to talk about what the presidential election has to do with office supplies and how we could be ready for that. And really some great tips on how to structure and how to look at your current situation and make it more cost effective for the firm. So, Cory, let's just start off. What are some of the bigger things that have happened in the office supplies world?
Yeah, so I think the biggest change in office supplies, other than that downturn during COVID, and then it's started to come back to around pre-COVID levels, is the shift in what firms are buying. So I mean, paper is often thought of as that's our main product that we're purchasing from office supplies, but a lot of firms now are purchasing a lot of breakroom items. So not only plasticware and paper towels and napkins and those sort of things, but snacks. So bags of chips, candies, soft drinks, bottled water, those are really creeping up to the top of that list in terms of things that firms are buying to encourage staff to return to the office. So kind of enticements, and that is really where we're seeing the biggest shift in spend.
Okay, a quick question. Okay, when you talk about break room, you're talking about snacks and so on like that. And I know that we have had some firms looking at like higher end snacks, like fresh fruit and so on like that. Let's touch base on that.
Yeah, so a lot of firms are, rather than just providing the prepackaged items that you think of in like a convenience store, gas station type situation, or providing fresh fruit, prepackaged sandwiches, salads, those types of things that are being provided at no cost to staff and stocked on a weekly or even daily basis. And
Interesting.
that is, those unfortunately are not available through most office supplies providers because they don't keep perishable items, but those are big initiatives within firms.
Okay. What else? What else have you seen?
So there's a few different things that we've seen with since we've kind of emerged to somewhat normal situation in offices now. And the big thing we see when we are approached by a firm or we approach a firm about their office supplies is that contract that they have with their office supplies provider has not been revised or updated since spending dropped and then as a result changed to those break room items. So their core list still reflects those like 2018, 19 items of paper, pens, paper clips, folders, red welds, those types of things, and it's not reflective of what they're spending the most of their money on. So they're not getting the best deal they could.
Okay, so paper volume has gone down dramatically. Break room food items have increased dramatically, and the core list has not kept up with those changes.
Exactly. There's been kind of there was a infomercial many years ago that said that it was for a rotisserie oven and set it and forget it. And with office supplies, it's the exact opposite. Don't set it and forget it because
No, it couldn't have been.
those items change year over year, month to month, quarter to quarter. So you always
Cory,
oh,
just,
Rob,
oh, Cory's
think
back.
you're muted.
Somebody else probably was talking.
Rob, I believe you're muted.
Okay, go ahead. I'm sorry. Just repeat what you were saying before we got muted.
Yeah, so with the core list, you want to constantly keep it updated because your items you're purchasing are changing as more folks come into the office, as you're establishing new initiatives to bring people into the office, and the your needs are changing. So don't negotiate that first core list and think that's good for the whole term of the agreement. And the provider should bring it up that you update it, but you shouldn't rely on them to initiate that conversation. You should be proactive and want to keep that updated so it is reflecting what you're spending most of your money on.
Okay, makes sense. And we're going to talk more about the core list coming up when we start talking about structuring your contract. I tell you what, we're going to do a polling question here, which is going to focus in on what is the biggest challenges you're facing. So if you could answer that polling question, that would be great. So we make sure we address these topics in the next 35 minutes. So Cory, how's the weather? How's it down in Charlotte?
It's great. It's sunny and warm and a welcome early spring, or some of the temperatures have been more like summer.
Okay. Okay, Libby, we could close this survey and let's see what the results are. Okay, kind of what we thought. Cory, you want to make some comments on this?
Yeah, so I think one of the biggest comments we get when we're working with a firm on their office supplies contract is how to handle individual or office preferences and how to standardize supplies firm wide. No one wants to tell someone they have to use a certain type of pen or a certain type of anything. So I think this is reflective of a lot of the conversations we've had with firms. And in terms of managing inventory levels, I will touch on it more in depth later, but it is a lot of the change that firms have gone through fully in office, through remote and COVID, and then now this hybrid environment, and determining what those par levels are going to be. You don't want to have too much and waste money and supplies, and you don't want to have too little and everyone runs out and is scrambling to get something there the next day.
Okay. Okay. Great segue into the firm-wide plan. Okay, and we see, I think it was 36% of the people are having an issue with standardization and all that based upon what we just saw there. So what are the challenges? If I want to establish, again, this is with the eye towards being more efficient and more cost effective here, a firm-wide plan on what you're buying. Okay, what are the big challenges? Which we have not saw, but go ahead.
Yeah, the biggest challenges are managing those individual preferences while trying to consolidate your spend into the items that the majority of the firm uses. Obviously, there are attorneys that like a certain type of pen or a certain type of legal pad or notepad, and you want to accommodate those, but you also want to drive that spend to the items that you're seeing the most savings on. And one of the ways that we find is the best way to do that is to handle those individual preferences on a case by case basis. Don't order, if it's a special pin that an attorney in New York likes, don't order 5 cases of those and then expect that everyone's just going to use those pins, because someone will say, well, that attorney got that pin, I want this pin. So really handle those on a case by case basis and maintain your standard supplies. It also helps with, we've had a few firms that one of the smaller offices felt like they weren't getting as good of supplies as the larger offices. They went and visited, and there was all of those special individual preference items in the supply cabinet, and they didn't have those in the office where he was based. So I think that can mitigate some of those complaints whenever you have an attorney that travels. And it's always nice to be able to go to any firm office and the supply cabinet looks exactly the same. Feels like you're in your home office.
Okay, so we don't say no. We're not making that recommendation, correct? If the managing partner wants a certain type of blue pen, he's getting that blue pen.
Absolutely. Mattern's recommendation would not be to tell a managing partner that he can't have the penny legs.
Okay. But you're saying then not necessarily a core list item, but more, order as needed, just target that one office for that where he's located at, or she. And again, not say no, but be smart about it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. By going with a firm-wide plan, firm-wide core contract item list, getting competitive bids, what are we seeing on the savings scale out there?
Based on our recent projects, we've seen between 25 and 45% savings based on a current contract, and those include times where a firm stayed with their current provider. They were happy with them, wanted to make sure they were getting the best pricing, and we still saw substantial savings.
Okay. Does it ever make sense not to have one firm-wide contract?
It can. Mattern recommends a firm-wide contract just to consolidate that spend because it drives more competitive pricing. But there are instances where, and particularly with service levels, where you have a national provider that doesn't have as big of a presence where some of your offices are located. So it makes sense to then negotiate a second contract for that office or those offices, depending on location, so that you can get next day delivery if that's what the firm needs.
Okay, so sometimes it does make sense not to have one. Okay, just got some great comments. I hope everyone's reading them. Tammy Netmeyer from Sandberg, do not allow special orders for pen preference. Too many attorneys to deal with personal preferences. And that is well, and then just follow up Patty Vitale with Hughes Hubbard saying, hey, someone wants a special pen, they got to pay for it. Okay, so again, other ways that you can handle those types of situations. It depends upon the firm and the firm's culture. But thank you very much for those comments. Okay, let's talk about Amazon when we're talking about firm-wide contracts. Okay, a lot of firms are utilizing Amazon. Some a lot, some on an as-needed basis. What's your thoughts on that? Pros and cons.
So Amazon is a fantastic resource. I use it, if not daily, weekly. And even whenever I'm at the store, if I see something, sometimes I price check it on Amazon. And it's tempting to do. And I think that's a default that a lot of people have gone into, that, well, Amazon's going to be cheaper. So you may have a office supplies contract and you think that's expensive for that item. So you go to Amazon and then you start ordering these one-off items from Amazon. You're still getting the next day delivery or 2-day delivery, and you're saving some money on that product. But what that does is it drives your spend down. So those rebates you're getting, those discounts that are negotiated into your contract are less. So
Your contract with
that's,
your office supplies vendor.
yes,
Okay.
absolutely. So it, while you may be saving some on that item today, it is coming back to you on your office supplies contract. So it's not always about the initial cost. You got to factor in those rebates and discounts that you have in your contract. And another thing with Amazon, we've had a few firms that have utilized Amazon a lot, and they've asked us, well, what if we just sign a contract with Amazon? We're already purchasing a lot. Everyone knows how to use it. It's super convenient. There's no training needed. It's just a small monthly fee to get an Amazon business account. But the pitfall of Amazon is that they don't customize pricing for you. It's not based on a core list. It's not based on what your firm needs. It is the Amazon business pricing, and those prices fluctuate constantly. Amazon is not warehousing all of those products that itself is acquiring. There are vendors that are selling those items, so those prices change. One example where Amazon business falls short is paper. A case of paper on Amazon is about $50, and we consistently in our contracts find savings of $10 to $20 over Amazon.
Okay. Okay, so what you're saying, and I just want to recap. Okay, Amazon's a great resource. Everyone knows how to use it. However, they will not give you contract items that they promise to hold those prices for the first year of the contract or whatever. Certain items are vastly more expensive, like paper. But occasionally there could be a bargain on there, and may make sense. A question that came in: are you seeing any disruption to the normal office suppliers due to Amazon? Great question, Chris.
We have not seen real disruption from Amazon to the major providers. I think probably the bigger impact is to the smaller players in office supplies. They've created networks so that you may have your local office supplier, and they're teamed up with warehouses that are supporting 20 other local office supplies providers. But a lot of the major providers are taking steps to, to counteract the Amazon effect. They've updated their websites, in many cases replicating that Amazon look and feel, so that if you go to their website, it's not a new platform, it's something you're familiar with.
Okay, so they're mimicking Amazon from the web's ordering viewpoint.
Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely.
Okay. Um, let's talk about coffee. Always comes up. It's like the third rail of office supplies in a lot of situations. Um, your thoughts on coffee?
So one thing we've seen over the past 4 or 5 years is the major office supplies providers venturing into other areas, and one of the big ones is coffee. They have a range of different types of equipment that you can purchase. They have a very large variety of coffee, ground beans, K cups, Flavia packets, and all of those items. I would say that if you have kind of the standard coffee equipment in your office, it may make sense to explore that with your office supplies provider. If you're going for something that is very high end, that's probably not an office supplies provider.
Okay, so if I want to go above and beyond the standard K cup type coffee situation, and I know we got a number of clients that have their own barista in their firms, like a little Starbucks. Um, so you're saying if I'm looking to go higher end, it's not really worth talking to any of the standard office supplies vendors.
It could be in some instances if you have a mix, but the office supplies providers, they're they're generally those packets or pods that go into the machine. They have drip machines, they have filtered water, but they do not have. There are some that have bean to cup options available, but they're not doing that higher end um, service. And one thing with the bean to cup is and limiting office supplies providers is that maintenance that those machines require. The
Okay.
higher end you go, the more work there is to upkeep it, and they just don't have the support at this point to be in there weekly or daily, whatever the needs are for that equipment.
Okay. I'm going to work in two quick questions here. Congestion pricing, we've seen that in Manhattan. Okay. Are we have you seen this with many vendors?
We have seen that surcharge be passed through. Um, in our contracts where that's happened, that was we had a clause in the contract that specifically prevented new surcharges from being applied, so we're able to get that taken out. But it is a charge that these companies delivering in New York are dealing with, and they are passing it through. So
I thought weren't they going to repeal that?
yeah, I believe so. I think there was an executive order or something that repealed it, but I believe it's still tied up in the courts.
Okay. And the next one is okay, just someone that utilizes Amazon. Everyone could see these comments for certain items outside the contract. So again, it's a great um, tool to keep in your tool bag, okay, and utilize it. But to be your primary, it's not going to happen, or it's really we don't recommend it just because of lack of contract price.
Yeah.
Okay, I I I want to get a new office supplies contract in place. Okay. I got an idea what I want to do with my coffee. I want to keep it under my contract. What's my first step going forward? If I want to get a new contract in place, what's the first thing I should do?
The first thing would be to look at your spend history, whether it's 6 months. Ideally, you would look at a year because spending definitely varies per season, and look at your most common items and put together a core list. And for that core list, Mattern recommends you include about 75 to 80% of your spend on that core list. And there's not a, when people think of a core list, I think the first impression is this is a small, refined list of those items that we're ordering hundreds of. But in I think the last project or last contract we negotiated, we included about 400 items in that core list. So it can be a pretty expansive list of items.
Okay, so we got a lot of items, but we're looking to cover about 75 to 80% of our spend on the core list. We also like to consolidate. You don't want to have 4 different type of medium point blue pens on your core list. We want one and try to drive all the spend towards that. Okay. While we're talking about the core list, I'm going to ask you this whole tariff situation. Okay. I think everyone's aware of it. You can't turn on the news without hearing about it. How is that going to impact the whole office supplies industry?
So as of today, we haven't seen in that impact pricing. We do expect that there will be an increase in pricing eventually. Not a lot of office supplies are manufactured in the United States. There are a lot of imported products. There's imported paper. Their pens are even manufactured outside of the United States. So it's something that will have an impact. We're still waiting to see what the extent of that will be, but what we're doing to counteract that now is ensure that the contract terms are in place to limit increases, to make suppliers provide letters indicating that their costs went up before they can increase.
Okay, that's what we handle. And so you think the tariffs, because in our RFPs, we're kicking around asking about US made products to avoid that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that is it's one strategy to try to get around those price increases. A lot of those products today are priced more expensively. So that may level the playing field, and there may be more savings to be had if you limit it to U.S. sourced products or identify certain substitutions.
Okay. Interesting. Okay, I get my core list together. Okay. I just give it to my current vendor and ask them to price it. Do I get competitive bids? And I know there's some questions in the chat about how often. Let's talk about that. So I get my core list together. Do I just send it to my current vendor? Do I include other vendors? How do I handle that?
So Mattern's position is to always go to a competitive process. That's how you're going to drive the best pricing. You may want to you may not want to leave your current provider. You like them, you have a good relationship, your account representative is responsive, but going to an open RFP doesn't mean you have to make a change. You're just comparing them to who else is out there, and they know that, and they're going to give you the best pricing they can rather than competing with themselves and giving you what feels like a good deal, but you don't know what the other providers are offering. So we would always recommend open competitive RFP process.
Okay. Question came through, a comment came through that is it a yearly I'm assuming that's RFP with 6 vendors, or how often do we recommend you do an RFP and the term of your contract?
So generally, we recommend a 5-year term for the contract. We typically see the best pricing with that term. It's important to always have protection for the firm in that contract to make sure you can cancel at any time without penalty. There could be increases that go through that take away that savings that you found when you first negotiated that. But in terms of going to RFP, I would say when you're having problems with your provider, if they're not responsive, that would be the time. What we like to do with contracts is have quarterly meetings to review the contract terms to make sure the provider is holding to those commitments they made when they negotiated that contract, to make sure you're updating your core list. Because that can change throughout the contract. It doesn't have to wait for every year. It doesn't have to wait until the end of the term. You can do that quarterly to make sure if your spending does shift, that those are the items you're getting the best discount on.
Okay, so you're saying a 5-year contract, capped escalations. Okay,
Yes.
unless there's something above and beyond, then they got to produce a mill increase letter or something along those lines. But really the way you manage that is more through managing the core list than managing everything that you're buying.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Keeping control of that core list is the key to making sure that relationship is successful through the entire term.
Okay. Okay, so I'm going out, get multiple prices in my initial RFP. What are the things I need in that contract?
So besides the core list, which we've talked about, you need to identify service levels. So if you're getting next day delivery or 2-day delivery, you want to make sure that if you are considering making a switch, that those are options there as well. There are a few other, I guess, differences between the major national providers. Some have no minimum order fee, which is one reason that people will go to Amazon, because they can order one item and it's there the next day and they didn't have to pay for shipping. So make sure there's no minimum order. You want to make sure that there is a clause in there that you can update your core list throughout the contract. You don't want it to be static for 5 years.
Okay.
You want to make sure you negotiate in rebates, discounts, large order discounts, prompt pay discounts, annual rebates based on your total spend. Those are some of the critical items that we like to see in those contracts.
Okay, give me an example of a rebate I should have on a contract.
So what we like to see is an annual rebate. So there's usually tiers. We like to see that spend for those rebates start at $0, because if it starts at $150,000 and you spend 149, then you're not getting anything back. But if it starts at 0, you're getting a rebate right from the first dollar you spent. So we like to see, the target is usually 3% for the first tier, and then escalates by 0.5% or 1% based on the tiers.
Okay, so we have different tiers based upon different spends. What about, okay, again, another argument to make sure that we're consolidating spend with that vendor, so we're hitting the different tiers and just using Amazon for the one-offs. So rebates, prompt payment discounts, okay, all these different add-ons, do they make a big difference, Cory, in your contract?
Yeah, they absolutely can. We see firms that when they've consolidated, standardized their spend, all of the offices are going through their national provider rather than ordering from Amazon frequently, which are going to. We've had firms that have used Sam's Club for their Breakroom items, and really consolidating that spend, even if you're paying a little more per item, you're getting that back, especially if you can drive initiatives to create large orders and you get a 1 or 2% discount on orders over like $200. That, in addition to the annual rebate, they add up over time.
Okay, makes sense. Okay, I do my RFP, I get multiple vendors, I choose someone, I negotiate the contract. I get all these things in that you recommend. How do I manage that contract?
So there are a lot of pieces to it that you have to monitor. The biggest one is your spend. So you don't want to sign the contract, you're getting a great deal, you're going to have a ton of savings, but you don't want to be bothered with meetings. It is important to stay connected to your provider. If you don't reach out, if you don't attend those meetings, they're going to assume you're happy and everything's fine, and it'll just keep going the way you signed it. And then in 5 years from now, even if you're not buying any of your core list items, those will still be your core list. So what we recommend is meeting quarterly, reviewing your spend, updating your core list, looking at those rebates to make sure that you are getting all of those.
Okay. Making sure that you're getting the rebates, knowing your spend levels. Okay. How about like, and you're saying meet with them quarterly throughout.
Yes,
Okay.
absolutely.
Okay. And we have a saying here at Mattern that it is not the vendor that's the critical part. Okay. It's the management of that vendor. So you can take a vendor that you may not be thinking doing a great job. You put the right contract terms in place, service levels, and something like that, and then hold them accountable. You could turn around almost any type of situation. So,
Yeah, absolutely. We just had a recent project where they had the same office supplies provider at a different firm and had a wonderful experience, moved to a new firm, and it was not even close to the same service. Um, they ended up renegotiating that contract, and it's been constant contact, constant maintenance so far. So
okay.
it can fall to the wayside even with an excellent provider.
Okay. Okay, Court, we got about 5 minutes left. Anything you want to add? Any final parting words of wisdom?
I think one item that we didn't really touch on is sustainability and green initiatives
Great point.
within firms, which is it's been around for a long time. Firms have been moving in that direction. I think recently those green products have become more reasonably priced, so you don't have to choose between your sustainability initiative or your bottom line. You can find a lot of those products for similar prices. One thing that I would caution on the green products is depending on your MFD manufacturer, so your copiers, some do not recommend using recycled paper within those as it creates
Okay,
jams and can cause
great point.
problems. So that is a consideration when you're thinking about green.
Okay, but otherwise, yeah, green has come down tremendously in price. Okay, so where it does make sense financially, and some firms don't care about that price part. Um, okay, and their whole recycled paper
Yeah.
causing problems. Okay. I'm just trying to see any last minute questions here. Someone's using their own personal account for Prime. We don't like mixing apples and oranges, but I could follow up offline with you on that one. Okay. Did any other questions? Please submit them. But in the meanwhile, I want everyone to get very excited about April 23rd. And that's where we're going to do our next, when we do our next coffee break with Tom Martin of LawDroid, who's going to talk about AI in law firm operations and where it makes sense or some practical uses. That's going to be hosted by our very own Nathan Curtis. So that's on April 23rd. So be on the lookout for the registration emails, and we'll also be posted on LinkedIn. So if there's any other questions that come up after today about office supplies or certain situations regarding that area, please don't hesitate to reach out. That's our contact information there. And Cory and myself will be very happy to address your question or concerns, get right back to you. So there's a quick question. When you do exit, please provide feedback. And thanks again for attending and have a great day. Take care.
Thank you.